Hey, I'm not Maggot, don't scroll. I was just out running some errands and I drove past an inmate work crew picking up trash on the side of the road. And I know that most people are going to see that and not think anything of it. Or they're going to think, oh, someone needs to get out there and pick up this trash. But for me, it was just another out in the open, very casual reminder that the 13th Amendment does still allow slavery as punishment for a crime, which is why they are allowed to enlist people as free labor in lieu of a sentence or in conjunction with a sentence. And then I was struck by the realization that in 1990 they passed the National Community Service Act, which allowed schools to mandate that community service be a requirement for graduation for high school students. And I just find it to be really interesting that things like knowing the Constitution, knowing your rights, understanding how the tax system works. None of those incredibly vital to the function of life things are required to graduate high school, but instead becoming familiar with the concept of doing labor for free as a service to the community is something that they are required to do in order to graduate from high school. But there's no correlation in the school to prison pipeline there at all. I don't know what we were thinking, and I'm sure that Linda McMahon, the founder or co-founder of the WWE, is for sure going to address that and turn things around in our education.
What's up? What's good? It's me, Rory Axe, and I'm back. And if my voice happens to find you today, I hope all is well. I'm Ro, and everything said on Rory Axe channel is alleged. It is in my opinion and for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is how I view what I see on TV and social media. My perspective, my opinion, what Ro has to say, and how I perceive it. Welcome back to Rory Axe. Today we're going to explore something that you may have heard of, the school to prison pipeline. But this just isn't some fancy phrase. It's a hidden pathway that pulls too many young people, especially Black and brown kids, from classrooms to correctional facilities. And today we're going to see just how it's all connected. The principal and the warden. Let's start with the person who has the ultimate authority in these spaces. The principal in a school and the warden in a prison. Think about it. In a school, the principal is the top authority, the one who makes big decisions about discipline, who sets the tone for what's acceptable and what's not. They can give a slap on the wrist, or they can expel a student entirely, taking their education out of their hands. They hold that much power. Now, compare that to a prison warden. They are the ones who decide how strict the facility will be, what privileges inmates will get or won't, even when or if they'll get to see loved ones. They are responsible for keeping order at any cost. Both are the final say when it comes to discipline. It's just that one deals with students and the other deals with prisoners. But if the roles and authorities sound pretty similar, it's because they are. Detention and in-school suspension as punishment. And let's talk about punishment. In schools, if you break a rule, where do you end up? Detention or in-school suspension. That's where they isolate you, keep you away from your friends, and force you to sit in silence. All in the name of discipline. It's like a mini prison sentence. And if you keep getting in trouble, you can end up in what they like to call alternative schools, which usually have stricter rules, fewer resources, and are designed for troubled students. In prison, if you step out of line, you end up in solitary confinement or in restricted areas with limited interactions and privileges. Both situations aim to control behavior through isolation. And while one is still in school and the other's in prison, the lesson they teach is the same. If you don't follow rules, you get removed, separated, and punished, even if the punishment doesn't actually address why you broke the rules in the first place. Lining up, moving in sync, and bells. Now, this is something we barely think about because we're so used to it. The way we were trained to line up, move in sync, and follow the bell schedule. In schools, students line up for everything: going to class, lunch, recess. Every time they move, it's controlled and supervised by adults, just like inmates, who are monitored to line up for meals, recreation, and other parts of the prison life. Then there are the bells. At school, bells signal when it's time to start or stop. That rigid schedule makes kids feel like they're under constant control, like they can't move without permission. Prisons are the same way, with alarms and signals telling inmates when and where they're supposed to be. Both places put people on tight schedules where freedom is a privilege and not a right. Uniforms and dress codes. All right, let's talk about what people wear. School uniforms and prison uniforms. Some schools enforce strict dress codes, saying it helps with discipline. Sound familiar? Because prison does the same thing with inmates. Uniforms in both settings means that individuality is taken away and conformity is enforced. It's a signal that the institution, not the individual, matters more. In schools, strict dress codes go as far as even to restrict certain hairstyles, accessories, or colors, which is similar to how prisons control personal appearance to avoid problems or gang affiliations. So, whether it's kids in school or inmates in prison, they are both being told that who they are doesn't really matter, only that they look and act the same way as everyone else. Suspensions, expulsions, and relocations. Let's go deeper. When a student doesn't fit the school environment or breaks rules too many times, they're often sent to an alternative school. It's a way to remove them from the main campus, out of sight and out of mind. They're labeled as trouble, and then they're pushed to the side, which can affect how they're seen and treated in the future. It's no different than in prison, where inmates who can't fit the facility rules are sent to higher security prisons with even stricter controls. And it doesn't stop there. Expulsion, where a student is kicked out of school entirely, is like a prison sentence. You're removed from your regular environment, and it's a struggle to get back. Expulsion records, like criminal records, can follow you for years, making it hard to find new opportunities. A student labeled as bad or dangerous in school will carry that with them, just like an ex-con with a record. Behavioral records and permanent stigmas. Just like prisons keep records of every single infraction, school does the same. When you're a student, every detention, every suspension, it all goes on your record. And teachers, principals, and everyone starts to see you as a problem child. In prison, it's called a rap sheet. In school, it's your disciplinary file. Both label you in ways that make it hard to break free from the reputation that's built around you. And once a student has a reputation, the cycle is hard to break. Just like with an inmate's record, a kid's disciplinary history affects how people see them, trust them, and treat them, even if they've learned from their mistakes. Another big similarity, the constant supervision. In schools, teachers, hall monitors, and school resource officers are there to keep things in order. Kids are monitored, their movements are restricted, and they are punished at the first sign of stepping out of line. The same goes for prison guards, who are always watching, ready to discipline if anyone steps out of line. For both students and prisoners, the constant surveillance teaches a lesson. You are always being watched, and if you mess up, you will be punished. It's a setup that doesn't allow for freedom, self-expression, or learning from your mistakes. It's only about compliance. Why this matters and what needs to change. Now you might be thinking, okay, I get the similarities, but what does it all mean? Here's why this matters. When schools operate like prisons, it doesn't help kids grow or improve. It conditions them to see themselves as controlled, restricted, and punished. When we discipline children in ways that mirror prison systems, we're preparing them for confinement rather than empowering them for success. To break the school to prison pipeline, we need schools that focus on support, guidance, and understanding, not just rules and punishment. Imagine if instead of detention or suspension, we had conflict resolution programs, mental health counselors, and a culture that values individuality. Imagine if students were seen as individuals with potential, not as problems to be managed. The school to prison pipeline isn't just an abstract idea. It's a reality that too many students face, especially in marginalized communities. And until we start addressing these similarities, the discipline, the surveillance, the removal of individuality, we're setting kids up to enter a system that's waiting for them with open arms. So what can we do? Start conversations, push for change, and recognize these issues in our own communities. It's on us to make sure the schools are safe spaces for learning, not training grounds for confinement. Well, that's it for this video. If you have a son or daughter, niece or nephew, give it a couple of minutes and sit down and watch this video with them if you can. Make sure that you drop down in the comments and let me know how you really feel. Like the video, share if you care, and subscribe if we vibe. And I'll see you on the next Ro Reacts video.